A very good evening to all our viewers. Welcome to this week's edition of The Agenda. My name is Muundjua, your host for tonight. And tonight I'm very excited because I'm seated between two giants of our country in so many respects. And I will start with Mr. Eberhard Hofmann, who is a veteran journalist, a veteran editor also of he was particularly known for his days at Allgemeine Zeitung. It's our local German daily here at Namibian Media Holdings. And he's still a correspondent for the newspaper. Dr. Hofmann, welcome to the show.
Good evening. Thank you.
He is. And then, of course, Festus, Dr. Festus Muundjua. He is patron of the Ovaherero Genocide Foundation and also an advisor to Paramount Chief Vekwiru Koro on foreign and diasporan affairs. Dr. Festus, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Okay, so thank you very much because this week has been a very busy one in the context of discussions around reparations and payments and settlements that the Namibia government has allegedly reached with the German government. On Friday, international news reported, for example, that Germany, for the first time, recognized it had committed genocide in Namibia during its colonial occupation, with Berlin promising financial support worth more than 1 billion euros to aid projects in the African nation. I'll start with Mr. Hoffman. What did you make of all the news that has emerged in the past week regarding this issue? What were your sort of gut feelings towards the whole thing?
Well, I was surprised that the news broke more indirectly and not from government level. That is the one part.
Yeah.
But then the contents became more known. And I think there are more in Namibia where some of us are quite excited that we have reached a point after 5-6 years of negotiations between Namibia and Germany. And we've been followed this on the obviously as far as the news was shared by the parties. What is very noticeable is that the issue is still, even though this is supposed to be as now coming to a settlement, that the issue is as topical and as emotional as many years ago. So there is a lot of work and communication amongst ourselves also to be done to get to grips with the whole issue. My feeling is that we contemporaries, after 117 years of when the colonial war started in this country, with all the implications and also with genocidal implications, that we need to communicate much more. We, the descendants of both sides, stand on the shoulders of our forebears, of our ancestors, and it will get us nowhere if we rekindle hostilities of over a century ago. Because we are here now in a new phase, 30 years of independence, and we have made some progress. But from our level here, we were not part of the negotiations. Yes. How the loss and the genocide on political level is to be assessed and evaluate it in material terms. There is much more to this than just material, because it also involves communication, it involves reconciliation.
Yes, yes, indeed. Now, Mr. Muundjua, you have heard Mr. Hofmann talking about how happy he is that there is such consensus reached. But you are coming from a traditional authority that does not recognize historically any of these efforts, let alone, I'm sure, the conclusion that is being reached now. What are the fundamental reasons why the Ovaherero Traditional Authority has generally stayed away from this process?
Okay, well, I have to start with a big thank you very much for having given us the opportunity to express ourselves.
Yeah.
Now, I would like to inform my audience that the question you are raising, I knew it was coming.
Yes.
And I have prepared written notes.
Yeah.
And since this is going to be a permanent record,
Yeah.
and I don't want to start looking for what to say and so on.
Yeah.
So maybe I should go to the prepared, text to your question.
Yeah.
You didn't start with the first question. It is somewhere in the middle of where you say, but I know the answer anyway.
Yes.
Why we stayed away from these negotiations. We didn't stay away. We were excluded.
You were never invited to the party.
Yes, we were invited to come and join the government delegation.
Yeah.
Now, the government has its own agenda. We have our own agenda. So we cannot be part of a group that doesn't pursue our agenda. We didn't want to be part of the government structure.
Yeah.
Because it was structured in such a way as to exclude us. We didn't want to function at the level of technical committees, and as it's going higher and higher up to, let's say, the political cabinet committee, when we wanted to find out whether we would follow our information all the way up to the political which is the cabinet committee, and how far are we going to go with this information for us to consider ourselves as part of the deal. We were told, and I hope that His Excellency the Vice President would remember this. It was not this current Vice President, but the one before him.
Yes.
He told us that, no, how do we expect to be part of the cabinet committee when you are not members of the cabinet? In a ridiculing way, as if you don't know that you are not a member of the cabinet. How do you want to be part of that? So that is the first exclusion.
Yes.
So further on to the cabinet, where it is now being chaired by His Excellency the President, it will be about you. You wouldn't even know the final outcome of your research things when it goes away from Namibia to the German government. Then we said, no, this whole thing by excluding us, and the exclusion was not that we cannot participate in the political committee level. They said, the two governments, the German government started it first. They are not going to negotiate with an individual, obviously referring to the late Chief Rirwako, who started rolling the ball. They also said, or a group of individuals. Now they are referring to the Hereros and the Namas jointly, because they want to talk to a sovereign government, and these people have no sovereignty. So how do we speak to them? That's the German government. And our Namibian government also accepted this kind of argument to tell us that this is now a government to government. When you say government to government, you are telling me it's none of your business. So that is how we have been excluded. And we didn't reject to negotiate. We wanted to negotiate because why do you think we have crafted the motion that our late chief tabled in the cabinet. And what does it say?
So Dr. Muundjua, if the Ovaherero Traditional Authority had a representative on the negotiating committee that government assembled, you don't think that some of your own aspirations as a community would have been influenced through your representative to all the levels upwards eventually?
No, not at all. Because I wouldn't think that I would want to be represented by a proxy when I myself am there. And I don't find myself wanting so much that I cannot represent myself. So the whole idea of being represented by a proxy, and a proxy not of my choice,
yes,
a government appointee, to further the agenda of the government. Now, how can he represent me? Because he doesn't even know what is in my reparation agenda. Representing me with what?
I hear you.
He doesn't have he doesn't even have the mandate from the, if we have to use tribalistic terms, from the Herero community where he hails from.
I hear you.
They don't appoint him. He's an appointee of the government to further the agenda of the government.
I hear you.
So I would not accept him to represent me.
I hear you. Mr. Hofmann, ours is a representative democracy, where once, in simple, direct terms, once a government is voted into power, issues like that, some would argue, become a part of the government mandate to represent us as the people. Do you think that government got it wrong by actually championing, if you like, this process instead of laying back and allow people like Mr. Muundjua to take the lead in that conversation with the Germans?
Yeah, no, I hear what you say. There is the line of argument to say that the two sovereign governments have to sort this out. The issue is really that the Namibian side has not taken enough care to involve the affected communities and to consult them through their leaders, through their established authorities. And that is, even though they appointed generally a highly respected personality as a negotiator. See, but now the process has gone so far that there seems to be this agreement on the government level. The big question is now, if the two governments are agreeing or about to agree, where do we go from here? That is quite a challenge, and this is, I think, where the communities directly come in.
Are there winners in this whole process, especially as it heads into what seems to be a conclusive stage of this whole process? Of course, we know that there are voices of dissent from communities like the Muundjua's community that he represents. But it goes without saying that the process is now heading for a conclusion. Are there any winners in this agreement, as you understand it?
Well, on the face of it, if you look at the material package, that is, and also the long-term indication of in which areas should be promoted with strong financial backing and promotion of what is it, infrastructure, education, economy, not just one package, but going over a number of years. This is, I think, where the communities must get strongly involved and directly. It can't be a top-down business then. Then we are really challenged.
Indeed. Mr. Muundjua, from your perspective, and of course the perspective of the traditional authority that you are aligned with, which is the Ovaherero Traditional Authority, when you hear this thing of the agreement has been reached, 18 point something billion will be paid to Namibia and then be channeled towards the communities, the descendants of the victims, does it, do you get a sense that if you were channeling, what kind of outcome would you have wanted if the Ovaherero Traditional Authority, for example, was the one directly dealing with Germany in this matter?
My friend, this whole deal, I got to learn about it from The Guardian. That is a paper in England.
Yeah.
And they quoted a portion from the agreement where they say that Germany is not willing to pay reparations or even to accept the word genocide. Now, the name of the deal that came out of the media recently, where the German president is coming here, we hear that he's coming here to collect signatures for a reconciliation and reconstruction and an apology deal or agreement. Now, our issue is genocide and reparation, right from the word go. And it will be like that all the way. Now, when you come to me and you say, no, I did not reach an agreement on genocide and reparation, that I'm not going to do, I have come here, I'm looking for your signature so that you can sign the agreement on reconciliation and reconstruction. Now, when these words ring in the ears of the Ovaherero victims of genocide, and now you say you want to come and reconcile with me, I would want to know, reconcile on what? Reconciliation, to reconcile is to restore old friendship. It is to settle old quarrels between two. Now, right from the word go, when the German people, settlers, and German troops came here to this country as far back as, let's say, 1842, all the way up to the time of the Berlin Conference, what they were doing here for 42, 43 years, including what they have decided in the Berlin Conference about me without me, namely to go and colonize me. Now, what would be the basis of our friendship that you talk about reconciliation? Now, you talk of reconstruction. It's part of the deal, part of the agreement. Now, when you talk of reconstruction, it has to do with building, to reconstruct. Now, if you take one of the regions earmarked for reconstruction, and you take the region of Comas region for the Ovaherero, if you take the space between Okahanja and Windhoek, which used to be Herero area, what would you reconstruct for the Herero between Windhoek and Okahanja? All that is now commercial farms, not owned by Hereros. Take the space between Windhoek and Gobabes for a Herero. What would you reconstruct there? And go further, Gobabes, go to a Pukiro, in between there, for a Herero. What would you reconstruct there? There is nothing for him. The space is not him, and he used to be there. You reconstruct what? So this agreement to us has nothing for us at all. It is an agreement on a thing that is not our concern. The issue for us is not reconciliation. You don't start from there. You go back to the agenda point, and that is genocide and reparation. And if you are not going to deal with that and agree with us, the victims, then definitely the negotiations as far as genocide and reparations are concerned, have not started.
I hear you.
Yeah, they have not started yet because they were pushed aside. Now you are coming with something else. And I'm saying that's very good, so that at least one time we can start properly to discuss, to negotiate genocide and reparation, which for now are not the issues.
I hear you. We'll go for a small break and then we'll be back to continue with the conversation. We are continuing with the conversation with Mr. Eberhard Hofmann and Mr. Festus Muundjua about the subject of genocide and reparations. Mr. Hofmann, you spoke earlier about this generation of yours and probably some other generations that are older than your own and then the rest of the generations that are younger than yourselves. That essentially they had nothing to do with, they were not involved in the atrocities that led to this deal being agreed. Just give me a sense of what the general feeling is among the current German community in Namibia, the German-speaking community in Namibia, when they hear about these reparations, about the Hereros and the Namas asking for justice. What do the Germans say to that?
There's a general desire and hope that there is an amicable solution, agreement, and conclusion even though history will never be concluded in the sense it happened and it's part of us as we go along. But the general feeling is that we should reach a point where we can somehow sort this out for the future so that it doesn't block our advancement and development into the future. And so I think quite a section of the community is pinning their hope on this agreement that this will get us forward. So, but as we see, there are a lot of emotions coming up, which have to be addressed, and we have to get back into more dialogue and get back to the drawing board to see where are we, where do we want to go really.
So some would say, Mr. Hofmann, so Germany on its part is now coming to the party and say, look, we are remorseful of what transpired, and we are coming to the party in the form of this billions of dollars to say sorry. Of course, lives of people can never be bought with money, so we can never put a price on that. So once that is agreed and is done, one could conclude that the Germans would then say, look, we are sorry, that is what we could do. Then they leave it there. No further demands from your side to us. The German community in Namibia, what are they prepared to do in this respect to say, okay, the Germans in Germany did their part? Is there any sense locally by your community to say, we feel perhaps that we have unfairly benefited? I mean, he was talking about land, for example, that is no longer accessible to the Hereros. What is the community here prepared to do to mend relations?
first of all, the community is supportive of the land reform program of the government. That is, and some advance has been made there. Then the general feeling is, if this deal comes off, which is quite a big package, then I say the German-speaking Namibians are also challenged that the implementation is done properly, you know, that there is no wastage, because as it seems, this is a big material package, but the material side alone is not sufficient. There must be also agreement, consensus, dialogue among us Namibians. Never mind, well, obviously amongst the descendants of the former warring parties. We are challenged by this. And we cannot hide away. Through history, when after the Second World War, after about 1,600 German men had been in captivity in South Africa, put into camps, the German speakers were more abstinent in politics. They were just grateful to be able to return to Southwest Africa then, and to a large extent, then they even, and I say we, supported apartheid, because there was this deportation list to expel lots of Germans from this country, from their home, because they'd been born here. So, but that left there. The German community is now, I can say that, again, more ready to come back into politics, and not just to benefit from the economy and from the existence, from the various sectors where they are active.
So can I come in there?
Yes, please.
We also have friends amongst the German people here. And what some of us are telling us is not the same as what my friend Hofmann is telling us. There is a hope, and a hope is not a reality. Now, they don't even accept that the Germans have committed genocide in this country. And I would like to hear from my friend Hofmann tonight whether he would say the Germans have or have not committed genocide against the Ovaherero and Nama in this country. A lot of Germans don't even accept that. Now, if you don't accept that you have committed a crime, and you want to come and apologize, to apologize presupposes that you have, in a way, accepted a guilt. And a guilt can only be for something wrong. And that is why you want to apologize. Now, if you don't accept what you have done, and that is genocide, there are no two ways about it. So the Germans would have to say, local Germans here, they would have to pronounce themselves. They have leaders that we know. Some of them are our friends. I don't want to mention names, but there are so many of them that still have not yet accepted that the German, their forefathers. We are not accusing them. You didn't commit genocide. You were not there. But don't forget that you are the beneficiary of the things that should have been bequeathed to me. So you have been, even though you were not there, your generation from day one when they have confiscated what we had, it was bequeathed to the first generation and the next and the next. It is a transgenerational wealth being enjoyed by the descendants of today. What about the descendants of those who have lost everything? And if I tell you everything, it's not just, you know, there used to be Herero land with the sovereignty. You don't want to accept this, but sovereignty, and when it comes to the issues of signing treaties, treaties are signed by sovereign nations. And the German state used to sign treaties with the Herero land state and Namakwa land state. So we lost land, a country called Herero land. It's a country.
It's a country.
Now, when you put the value of a country, even if you take one of the states of the Federal Republic of Germany, one of the states, take Bavaria, for instance, can it cost 1.1 billion if you have to sell it?
I hear you.
Yeah, if you have to take one of the states, like one of the states of Namibia, which was Herero land, now we take a state in Germany that is called Bavaria. It's a state, is it not? But never mind, if you take one of the states that form the Republic of the Federation of Germany, can you sell it, all of it, to the Russians or to the Chinese or to the Americans for 1.1 billion euros a state? So we didn't lose a farm, the Namas and the Hereros. We didn't lose 10 farms. We lost the whole country. And what we have lost, with all its minerals, including the blue economy, the wealth of the ocean, and underneath the. Now, how can you sell one country to 1.1 billion, which you cannot even say is the price of one state of Germany if you were to sell it?
I think if
you know the extent to which you have the things that we have lost. It's not a joke. We didn't lose 10 farms. We lost whole country.
I think you've made that point. Mr. Hofmann, what do you say to Mr. Muundjua's point, especially on whether the local German-speaking community believes that there's actually been any wrongness done towards the Hereros and the Namas?
Start with you, whether you believe that there was a genocide committed, and then tell us what the other Germans are saying.
I want to tell you that I regard this issue highly contentious, and there is a lot has been published and is still being published on the term of genocide, whether it was or was not. You find a spectrum. There are some of the German speakers who accept the dogma, others regard it as more as a dogma. But what we agree on generally in the German community, that there have been extremely draconian laws. The Herero lost the right to the land, the right to even have cattle after the colonial war, and the collecting the population, or putting them into camps, in prisoner camps, men, women, and children even, in Swakopmund and in Lüderitz. And the high mortality rate in those camps, that is very well known. And the loss of territory. So we feel strongly that this deserves compensation, call it reparation, call it reconstruction. There are many terms how to promote and rebuild the country. And what we have here is a post-generational trauma that we must speak openly about it. And this is why I also welcome here this opportunity, that we address this squarely.
So I want to comment on something there, because we are here to try to also express our understanding of things.
Yes.
Genocide cannot be left to Hereros and Germans to say what they think.
Yes.
Genocide has been decided upon at much higher levels,
Yes.
at state level. Now, when the definition of genocide was agreed on by the international community, by the United Nations,
Yeah.
they tell us in clear terms what genocide is. And that became a convention, a law, a piece of international law. It goes under the name United Nations Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. It was adopted in 1948.
Yes.
Germany has accepted that document, that definition. On the 24th of November 1954, Germany has acceded. When you look at this document, it gives you the date, and that small a stands for acceded, accepted, ratified, and then it was deposited in the United Nations Office of the Secretary General. Namibia also accepted this document. I wonder if the date is... For Namibia, they have our country has accepted this definition 1994. So the country Germany and the country Namibia, the states, have accepted this definition, whether a German or a group of German, a Herero, group of Herero, accept it or not. It's irrelevant because this is an international law. And it says what genocide is. I know the Germans say, but this applies only to events after the Second World War. No, that is an argument of somebody who wants to run away with murder. Because modern international conventions also say the crime of genocide has no time limit. There is a United Nations Convention, actually two of them.
Yeah.
One is the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. It says that genocide has no time limitation. That's Article 5 of the Rome Statute. And then you have also another one that goes by the name, you can Google this yourself. It says the United Nations Convention on the Non-Applicability of the Statute of Limitations for the War Crimes, Crime Against Humanity, and Genocide. For that, there is no time limitation. And if you want to be sarcastic, or even for argument's sake, you can say you can go back as far back as the time of Adam and Eve. When it comes to genocide, there is no time limitation. So when did time begin? As far back as when the time started, for genocide, there is no time limitation. So these things are clear, and when we talk of negotiations, we cannot negotiate in terms of our emotions. The Namibian Parliament resolution is there, and this resolution is not a resolution of a political party congress. It is a resolution of the highest legislative body of Namibia, the Parliament of Namibia. Now the executive of Namibia is distorting the will of the Parliament. Now, then you talk of representative democracy, where the executive is violating the law of the country. All these conventions have been domesticated. They have been made part of our law. And if you become part of the law is now the Constitution, which has the rule of law. The rule of law in Namibia doesn't apply because the executive can come and just put aside the decision of the Parliament, which happened in the case of the resolution.
Yes.
And international law accepted by our country, these are pushed aside, and now it is government to government. That is a policy, it's not a law.
I hear you. Again, Mr. Hofmann, I need to, it's a question similar to one I asked you earlier. Once the Germans feel they are done, with Namibia as far as this matter is concerned. How do we build relations between the local German community with particularly the descendants of genocide? How do we just make sure that there's cohesion between various communities in Namibia, particularly your community and his community?
As I mentioned earlier, we must engage in open dialogue, in open communication. We must table our concerns, and we must talk about our perceptions, contentious as they may be and as they are. We are fully aware that this is highly emotional. But Namibia has built up a tradition of open dialogue since independence, more so even than before. We have to utilize that space that we have because we are together in this boat.
Yes.
We are, as I said, we are the descendants, the heirs of a legacy of history which was very much written in blood. But then we must also be able to see history and its process holistically, as it goes on. And as I would like to repeat that it would be of no use to rekindle hostilities of 117 years ago, because there have been 2 world wars in between,
yes,
also affecting this country, very much so. So we must see this also in the historical perspective. But history as such is not over.
Yeah.
It is there. The consequences of the colonial war, also called genocide, is still there in how the land is apportioned and allocated.
Yes.
Even though but there are initiatives afoot, as we know.
Yes.
Successful, not partially only successful, when you see that the land reform process is benefiting certain people who are rich. They are not victims of genocide or descendants of the warring parties of that time. So we are highly challenged here,
yes,
to address these issues.
We'll go on a break, Mr. Hofmann, and then we continue afterwards. We are continuing with the agenda. I now have Mr. Muundjua, you wanted to just say something back to Mr. Hofmann.
Yes, no, I would like to sincerely, Mr. Hofmann, agree with you when you talk about the need for the descendants to try to engage each other.
Yeah.
That has also been the wish of the of our leaders on both sides. Because my leaders are not only on the Herero side, also on the Nama side. We have been craving for an audience with the local Germans here, if they could accept the need to talk to each other. Because
well, what will that conversation be about?
Well, if in principle, the local German leaders would accept to meet our leaders here, in principle, once we have come that far, then we would have to go to number 2. Shall we do it around a structured agenda with agenda points that we will be discussing in this engagement? Definitely, we would have to touch on historical issues. We have to touch historical issues will bring in the issue of genocide and reparation. And then we have to say, but how do we handle it? That comes after, during the discussion between the 3 communities. Now, if that can be arranged, and incidentally, I think I have already a contact with a German friend of mine that we have agreed to, not at the leadership level, but as friends. Like this person also, we disagree peacefully.
Yes.
He's not my enemy because he hasn't done anything to me to be my enemy. Only that we disagree. Now, if we can organize a platform where the local German leaders and the Herero leaders and the Nama leaders can come together around a structured agenda with definite points of discussion. We are not inviting each other for a war.
Yes.
It's for a discussion, a tripartite discussion. So that we can...
Is there anything specific that you would want the local German community to address? You spoke about displacements and stuff like that.
Yes, if in principle they say, yes, we are willing to have a summit of the 3 communities, the Herero communities, Nama communities, and the local German communities. And it might even expand to other, like what about the Afrikaans-speaking communities? They are also possessors of the property that used to be ours. So it cannot just say only the Germans. What about the others who are not Germans, the Afrikaans-speaking community, and other communities? We have Jews in these countries as well, as whites. This kind of, but we can start from a point and expand. But for now, my concern, my request, my invitation, I take the liberty of doing it even on behalf of my leaders on both sides, that let's have a summit, let's have an agenda, put points on it so that we can discuss. If not starting with the leadership, we can you can constitute a technical committee and you meet the technical committee and we sort things out from bottom up rather than from top down.
I can just add here that you may be aware that the Forum German-speaking Namibians has been founded at the end of April. It was already, it's part of the, it started also with the so-called Gesprächskreis Swakopmund, where you have von Wietersheim, you know of them. And in Windhoek there was been a parallel movement to form a voice of the German, to establish a voice of Namibians of German descent. This has now happened. And in the objectives of the forum, there is the communication and exchange with Namibian groups, co-Namibians, not amongst foreigners, but as citizens within the reference, obviously, of our very, of the good constitution that we have in Namibia, which has lasted and which has served us fairly well, even though it is being violated here and there. But that is no excuse. So, yes, I can assure you that the Forum of German-speaking Namibians will pursue this very positive and constructive proposal.
Well, we need the, especially the German-speaking community here. We are not inviting you for a fight. We want to invite you to become our friends, so that we form a common front to put pressure on the German government to negotiate with us. You cannot pay us reparation. I don't think you have enough to pay reparation to the Namas and the Hereros, you, the local Germans. The government that committed a crime is in Germany. And if you can talk to your kith and kin through this joint venture with us, the victims, to put pressure on the German government, you will be our friends. But if you side with them, then already you are telling us that you are our enemies. But no, we don't want to create enemies out of you. We want you to be our friends so that together we can put pressure on the German government. Once they hear that the local Germans here, I just said hope is not a reality, but I would hope that once they know that the local Germans, they are now siding with the Ovaherero victim and the Nama victims, to say that we must listen to us, the Hereros and Namas, on the issue as, and we will never shy away from saying it, on the issue of genocide and reparation. It's been done in history. So that is why we can also use history to say that if historically you have done it with the Jews, why would you not use the same model? Where is the German Chancellor Merkel today in these discussions? And history tells us the role that was played by another German chancellor before her, Dr. Konrad Adenauer. He was actually the driving force, the catalyst that led to the discussion between Germany and the Jews. That role was played not by the German president, but it was played more by the German chancellor and other diplomats. And they put pressure on the German parliament to agree, and even to agree for the dialogue to start with the Jews. If we say we follow that model, what is wrong with it if it applies to us here? It's perfecto.
Let me. I think you've made that point very clear, Mr. Muundjua. Mr. Hofmann, in the beginning, not in the beginning, a while ago, made a point very subtly that the way the administration of land in the country is being handled. He mentioned that many farms have ended on the land, have landed in the hands of people who are not victims of this whole thing and whatnot. Do you agree with him on that? That part of the problem why the land question has not been properly addressed, especially in favor of those who lost it, lies in the manner in which government has been running the affairs? CEOs of SOEs and ministers and everybody, some are even benefiting from resettlement farms with all their wealth that they possess.
Yeah, we know that very much. Look, we are not saying compensation must also take the form of, I must go and get the farm of Mr. Hofmann. If he's willing to sell it to me, not on a willing seller, willing seller, willing buyer. Nonsense. we have to talk about these things because the loss to us is real, and it has impoverished us transgenerationally. We are in a position in which we would not have been had it not been for everything that we have lost. Now, this land issue, the way it is being, is it handled or mishandled by our government?
Yeah.
It's a total fiasco. And we don't want to deal with the land issue only with the Namibian government.
Yeah.
We want to deal with the people that caused us to lose land.
Yeah.
So that when we talk of compensation, it's not from him. He doesn't have enough. We want it to come from the people who caused the loss of land to us. They must compensate to us not 1 billion, 0.1, because our country does not have the value of 1.1, joke. It's like something that you give to your child to go and buy a lollipop or stocky liquor in the shop.
Stocky liquor. Okay. Just as we head towards the conclusion of the show, Mr. Hofmann, how does the subject of ancestral land sit with the local German community? It's a subject that pops up time and again in the national conversations. How does it make them feel?
Well, I can say there is some anxiety because to solve the land question or to reach solutions, that is obviously an emotional and generational issue. And we have this process of land reform, but as we have pointed out, it has many weaknesses. Presently, and on this topic, you will find and encounter amongst the German-speaking community also anxiety that it may end up in, say, radical solutions. We have examples of the fast land reform in Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
I dare say that this has led very much to the poor state that we have in Zimbabwe, and the inflation, and even the exodus of Zimbabweans. There are about 3 outside the country, 3 million outside the country. Namibia has no political refugees. Rather, people want to come to Namibia because generally we are regarded as a very stable country. We know that government has a problem with people coming in who want to settle here. So, but anyway, to come back to your question, yes, there is some anxiety amongst the farmers, but there is also a high degree of willingness to contribute to a solution, an amicable solution, as we go along.
As we go along. Mr. Muundjua, this process of negotiation with Germany seems to be at a point of no return now. At what stage does the Ovaherero traditional community and persons like yourself willing to join this thing? Because it's at a point of no return now, and looks like people have signed, looks like that money will come, looks like leaders would have to then be involved at some stage to dictate how the little that is coming from Germany should benefit their respective communities. Because if you continue to stay away, you run a risk of not having proper input in how your particular communities within your jurisdiction can benefit from this. Is there any appetite at all to join that conversation going forward?
No. You have to understand our point of departures. We want the issue of genocide and reparation. That is now the thing that is the thing. There is nothing else. Now, to deal with those issues, there are already in place many things that we can use. First, start it all over again on a blank sheet. What he's coming for is like a check whose particulars are already filled in, and he's only coming to collect the signature. Because the check, the money, we know what it is, 1.1 billion. Now, start it from scratch means use the instruments that are in place. There are many. You start with our own resolution. Now, if you say that one is only a resolution and Germany is not part of it, fine, I'll respect that. But then I say, okay, now let's go further. Now let's go to the laws, the international law in terms of which genocide and reparation must be handled. There you don't have to argue, is it atrocities or is it genocide? Because the UN definition itself, it says when you do not agree on the terminology, whether it is genocide or atrocities, Article 9, go to the International Court of Justice. It is a United Nations court which gives legal opinion. Germany and Namibia, if they don't agree with the terminologies, whether genocide or atrocities, they must agree. They must be willing to agree. They must hurry up and go to the International Court of Justice and say, what happened in this country in terms of this law that we have signed? Was it genocide or was it not? When you get that legal opinion, and I can assure you it will never be that it was not genocide when you go to the intent and the things that happened. They decided and they sent von Trotta here with a written intent to go and exterminate, which is prohibited by this law. So if you go to the international community to get a legal opinion, then you have a basis for discussion, for the discussion of genocide and reparation.
I hear you.
So, and other instruments that you can use, if you don't do it that way, you are going to go for, this is actually a special initiative number 2.
Yes.
The first one was a fiasco. You are heading for a fiasco. It's not a deal that is going to be meaningful in any way because it is not even about genocide and reparation. It is on reconciliation. What do we reconcile on? Even if the two of us say, now let's reconcile, what would be the quarrel between the two of us to sign a reconciliation? We are friends wherever we meet. We don't need a paper to sign that.
Yes, I have to stop you there, Mr. Muundjua. Very, very difficult to end this constructive conversation, but we have to end it there. So thank you very much for coming to the show.
It's a pleasure. I return also thank you very much for giving us the opportunity.
Thank you for this opportunity to raise a few points. And obviously we have to pursue this avenue.
Yes, indeed. That is Eberhard Hofmann and Festus Muundjua speaking about the reparations and the genocide, the two issues that have dominated conversations in the past week. Thank you for watching.
Mr. Hofmann, sorry. Can you agree that we are going to talk to our leaders in our communities to start a dialogue?
Yes.
We have so agreed.
Yes.
We have this agreement we have here.
Yes. We talk to our leaders.
The agenda was the platform on which the agreement was reached. Good night.